how are you? Oh wow, I love this movie. Wait, no. Do I love this movie, or do I just like it when Ben Stiller plays that one guy? You know, the guy there's all those theories about being the same guy? Personally, I don't really give much thought to those theories because actors playing similar character types doesn't surprise me. I mean, sure, but if we're gonna call this out, we may as well assume every Jeff Goldblum character is always the same guy too, and Michael Cera. I mean, how come there's no theories about how George Michael is the same guy as Scott Pilgrim due to them both having deviancies? There's not, because that would be dumb. But there's a lack of video essays on the topic, and I'm curious to see if there's a gap in the market because nobody wants one, or because of some other reason I can't see. So Ben Stiller is one of the most versatile performers of the past 40 years, making his mark as an incredible actor, director, producer, and screenwriter with a range that swings wildly. And unlike a lot of his contemporaries, he has managed to stay relevant even as the genres he previously dominated have fallen out of favor. The explanation for this is simple. Ben Stiller is really good at what he does. From his early sketch comedy days on the Ben Stiller Show to more mainstream hits like Zoolander and Night at the Museum, he has shown a consistent ability to jump between neurotic everyman and absolute freak. But buried within all that range is one very specific archetype that just keeps showing up. Two times basically, and there's all these theories about it, but I guess that's enough. A character that's unique to Ben Stiller who shows up across genres and across studios, and one that's managed to be the most quotable part of some incredibly quotable movies already. And after watching all of these movies, all two of them, where he plays this character, I can confidently say he saved those movies. But there's gotta be something here, so let's start by breaking down the character's surface level characteristics and the movies he appears in. What we have here is a hyper-obsessive, self-absorbed man who's hiding a deep insecurity around his body and a childhood lost under a thick layer of zen fake confidence. He always places himself into a position of power over some vulnerable population, and he's a habitual user of racial microaggressions.
Looks like my man's packing.
Product of the time or deeply ingrained character trait? My video essay, so I get to decide. His first mainstream appearance would be in 1995 in Heavyweights. It's a movie about a fat camp that gets taken over by a charismatic fitness guru and his personal army of brown shirts. While it was intended as a feel-good Disney movie about friendship and self-esteem and the power of a well-executed insurrection, its rather dark third act left people with mixed feelings, to say the least. Here, Ben Stiller plays Tony Perkis, the new owner of Camp Hope. He's 90s ripped, 90s extreme, and of course, like I said, 90s problematic.
I see the future chairman of a Fortune 500 company. I see a famous rap artist.
He's kind of like RFK Jr. in both appearance and worldview. In contrast to the previous owners of Camp Hope, Tony runs the program with all the enthusiasm of someone who actually wants these kids to lose weight. But it's his own body issues and the way he forces these kids to adhere to his standards of health that sets him up as our villain. You see, Tony, these are boys. It's the girls that you get to make feel like shit about their body from a young age and get away with it.
Why don't those guys just lose weight? Why don't you show them how to throw up after meals like you do?
What you're doing here isn't cool. Tony's here to save these kids from the same childhood of obesity that he went through. You see, he claims that at 12 years old, he had been 319 pounds. Despite his rather relatable backstory, Tony makes quick enemies of both campers and tenured staff alike. But it's his raid on one of the cabins where things really take a turn. Not only does he steal their meat stick and violate this young man's trust, he has his only Italian camper banished from the campgrounds just for being a wise guy. Tony, look at this young man. He was born to be a wise guy. Would you deprive a duck of water? Following this, what I'm going to call some sort of hate crime, the kids resort to smuggling fast food into camp, which goes unnoticed until their midsummer weigh-in. Here, Tony finds that most of the campers have gained weight since arriving at camp, and he just snaps.
Whose fault is it? It's not my fault. It's their fault. That's right, it's their fault. It's their fault. It's their fault.
As punishment for their lack of discipline, any campers who've not met their weight goal must join him on a 20-mile hike the following day. This is when the campers and staff collide, forming a uniparty that overthrows the Perkis system. A plan is put together that expertly uses Tony's arrogance and some Vietnam-era war tactics against him. The kids capture him as a prisoner of war, leaving his cabinet without any centralized authority, and the regime crumbles. But it's not over yet. They've defeated Tony in the short term, but they need to do reputational damage as well. It's the only way to save others from him. This is when the videographer from Tony's infomercial turns on him due to non-payment and agrees to use the footage he captured to show the real Tony Perkis. The execution is near flawless, but the man escapes captivity right as these parents learn the truth about this summer at Camp Hope. But Tony is yet again no match for himself, and in the most character-appropriate conclusion, He backflips himself into a head injury and is removed from the camp by his father. Ben Stiller is unreal here. In a relatively grounded story, he plays a man that feels almost too over the top to make up. Like, the movie might sound crazy based on the summary I just gave, but that's because it was only the Tony parts. There's an entire other, like, real story happening that I don't even discuss. Tony is an adaptation of an adaptation. He was heavily inspired by Tony Bobbins, another Stiller bit that he had done years earlier on his show.
I am not evil. I am not the devil.
And Tony Bobbins is based on the real guy, Tony Robbins, who, if you've never heard of Tony Robbins, just imagine Oprah for boys. So we know he did this Tony character twice in the 1990s, but it wasn't until 2004 that we really see him reimagined as a more successful, less Disney kind of guy. Dodgeball is a sports comedy that some older man in your life probably quotes a lot. And I'll be honest, I love bad movies and remember watching this one and liking it back in the day, but that was before I rewatched it for this video. This thing is tough to get through. Everything about it is unfunny except for Ben Stiller. Like, the only reason to watch this movie is Ben Stiller. You know what? No, that's not true. The best moments of this thing are those spent away from our main cast of protagonists, which is not ideal, but it does leave other stuff to enjoy in this movie as long as Vince Vaughn isn't on the screen. Anyway, meet our main character, Peter LaFleur, unfortunately played by Vince Vaughn. He's the owner of Average Joe's, a gym for misfits like nerd, 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 and pirate. They're going for a wacky crew and a straight man kind of thing, but it falls very flat because Vince Vaughn is so unpleasant. He's presented like Joel in Community, but without being handsome or engaging. That does not stop them from trying to sell Vince Vaughn as a sex icon, which is just... Come on. Our plot kicks off as Ben Stiller as White Goodman buys Peter's second mortgage and plans to foreclose on his gym unless they can come up with $50,000, a lot of money in 2004, in the next 30 days. At first glance, you might not see much Tony in him, but really, this is Tony turned all the way up. His body is harder, his obsessions elevated, and notably, his racial microaggressions have evolved into racial and sexual macroaggressions.
We're a pretty tight-knit tribe here, but there's always room for one more squaw.
To save Average Joe's, Peter and his team of losers enter the Las Vegas Dodgeball tournament, barely managing to make it into the competition by doing what the Daily Wire thought they were doing with Lady Ballers. But White forms a rival team, the Globo Gym Purple Cobras, purely out of spite and begins sabotaging them at every turn. As both teams compete their way to the championship, there's some interpersonal drama that's not Stiller related, so not gonna mention it. The Average Joes squeak through the early rounds, helped by a dodgeball expert, Patches O'Houlihan, the only other memorable character from this movie aside from White Goodman, also pretty racist. The time is almost upon them, but just before the finals, Patches is killed in a freak accident, leaving the team when they needed him least. It's at this point that White offers Peter a $100,000 bribe to just walk away, a lot of money in 2004, a bribe that Peter accepts and heads to the airport with in the morning. There, he's convinced by Lance Armstrong, who's also giving us a much funnier performance than Vince Vaughn, to not give up and go to support his team. Here, we finally get our face-off between White and Peter, and just like at Camp Hope, the greatest weapon against him is himself. Allowing the spirit of dodgeball to guide him, a blindfolded Peter LaFleur wins, and the Average Joes collect on their $50,000 prize money, as well as a return of $5 million, a lot of money now still, from a long shot bet Peter had placed using White's bribe. With this, Peter buys controlling shares of Globo Gym, and White instantly swings to the opposite end of his eating disorder. Technically the end of the Stiller content here, but I am going to tell you how Dodgeball ends. Because this was 2004, the story can't end without a quick sexualization of our one and only woman with a speaking role. The long joke for the movie being that she must be a lesbian because why isn't she into any of these eligible men? Her girlfriend shows up, they share a kiss, everyone goes, "Told you, Vince Vaughn, that's why she didn't want you." And then she turns around and kisses Vince Vaughn too. Because, you know, bisexual women don't do monogamy. That's only for everyone else. Awful, awful, stupid movie, but man, does Ben Stiller and everyone but Vince Vaughn save it. Sure, White differs from Tony in a few ways, but they're more alike than they are different, so again, maybe there is something to this thing. They both have a deep insecurity around their weight, both are looking to expand the influence of their body transformation programs, and both fall victim to their own hubris. The places where they differ are really just in the places that Ben Stiller is able to take the character based on the audience it's intended for. I have no reason to believe Tony Perkis wouldn't have done any of this in a less family-friendly cut of Heavyweights. Alright, so let's hear him out. We have two characters that are effectively the same guy, and Stiller acknowledges this, at one point stating that he just thought nobody had seen Heavyweights and it would be safe to reuse the guy. Okay, so maybe it makes more sense than the Jeff Goldblum thing, but it still doesn't make as much sense as the Michael Cera thing. It's not enough. This goes beyond what can be done in a typical plot summary heavy video essay. No. I am not satisfied to see the connection and call it good. We can accept the theories that they are the same character, sure, But what about the how? Welcome to the Ben Stiller OC portion of the video. Don't everyone reach for that like button at once. Enough to go around, but if there's not, share the subscribe button. So we have Tony and White, and it's safe to assume they're the same guy based on everything we've laid out so far. We have vanity, we have insecurity, we have a proclivity for exerting power over some vulnerable population. But for me, it's missing a story. Where does it begin, and why does he go by different names? Ben Stiller, the only real authority on this thing, would have us believe they're first or second cousins, and no offense to Mr. Stiller, but he's clearly not taking the reins on this thing. We need to get from here to here, and we need to do it within the greater universe of movies, so I'm gonna take over. Because Ben, first name basis, has breached different genres with the character, I consider every Stiller performance to be free range. So let's start with Happy Gilmore, where he plays Hal L, an orderly at the nursing home Happy's grandmother is stored in while he tries to win the money to buy her house back. Hal L is malicious, he's manipulative, and notably, he's placed himself into a position of power over a vulnerable population. And I found it's common to include Hal L in the theory of these being the same guy, with him being the third same guy, based on really nothing more than having a mustache and being kind of mean. I'm gonna say he's not the same guy, I'm sorry. But who is he? How is there another dude who almost fits this mold just floating around in the primordial soup of broad comedies? Does Tony have a brother? Well, what if I told you he did? In 1996, Jim Carrey and Matthew Broderick would star in The Cable Guy, a movie that you should watch, but whose plot is not important to the point I'm making. What is important is Ben Stiller's small cameo as Sam and Stan Sweet, a set of former child star twins, one of whom is on trial for the murder of the other. Following the cancellation of their sitcom Double Trouble, Sam fell into a life of crime, larceny specifically, and Stan joined a cult. We don't know why Sam allegedly killed his brother, and we never received the verdict due to Jim Carrey knocking out the satellite that's broadcasting the trial. And as long as I'm just saying things, this is probably the inspiration for the ending of The Sopranos, which would air just a decade later. This microphone has too much power. I can take a guess as to Sam's motive by backtracking to heavyweights when Tony is picked up by his father, also played by Ben Stiller, despite his real father being in the movie already. I find this interesting because we see both characters at the same time. There's two of him. This is not a Batman situation. The Cable Guy, just like Heavyweights, has two Ben Stillers. So we have to ask, could Tony Perkis be Sam Sweet? And could Tony's dad be Stan Sweet in disguise? The connections are there. We know that Tony, just like Sam Sweet, dabbles in larceny, as is evident by his stealing of the camper's mail. His desire to find a television audience only furthers my point. Combined with the trauma around his lost childhood, something many former child stars must contend with, we definitely have some pieces fitting together. In fact, Tony tells the campers at the beginning of the movie that he was raised as an only child and schooled exclusively by private tutors. And that sounds like some shit a former child star who's trying to distance himself from famously having a brother who looked just like him would say. The schooling, a kernel of truth to keep things believable as he lies about everything else. And we even have a motive.
The kid, he was always a little off. I mean, my parents didn't hug me. You don't see me freaking out like a little baby.
This betrayal. Could Sam just not let this go, this dig? Possibly. But something's missing. A smoking gun. A missing link. One found right out in the open, ripe for the picking.
I saw someone, he looked Asian, and he was speaking another language. I'm pretty sure it was...
Gotcha! Gotcha, you son of a bitch! Bring out the champagne. I feel like LeBron in whatever year the Cavs won the NBA playoffs. This piece of race-based evidence is all I need to lock this thing in. White Goodman is Tony Perkis, and Tony Perkis is Sam Sweet. As for Hal-El, something of an intersection. Originally Stan in disguise. See, Stan must have sought a different path than his brother. Consider it. Double Trouble ends. Sam and Stan are without work and adapting to an adulthood where they peaked as children. They have money, but no way around being washed up in their 20s. No matter what, these two will always just be Zach and Cody. But what if they weren't? What if they could be anyone? Sam buys a summer camp and tries to be a brand new man with a new media empire. The summer camp, a sort of neverland that allows him to have a childhood his fame deprived him of, while also building something new for his adulthood. Stan ends up in the nursing home, just looking to distance himself from the fame altogether. He doesn't want to be around children, and the constant reminder of what he never had, so old people. And just like his brother, he also takes the opportunity to profit on his vulnerable population. After his time in the cult, he must have learned just how beneficial unpaid labor can be for those who know how to elevate themselves on the step stool of power. When Sam, now Tony, fails at Camp Hope, he calls his brother to come save him. Stan, now Hal-El, steals some old man's clothes and makes his way over there. It's at this point the rift begins to widen. Stan can't help himself. He takes a jab at his brother's incompetence, and Sam does not take it lightly. This look, this resentment would stew until sometime between February and June of 1996, Sam would kill his brother, blindly framing any non-white person he can think of. And it's safe to assume Sam was found innocent by a jury of his peers. It was the 90s. There were no rules. And now, without the hindrance of his brother's bad vibes bounding around his Ozen layer, Sam would take on the name White, because in the logic of the character, he is a white, good man. As for Hal-El, a bit of a loose end. We've seen him again, and I would argue this is Sam taking up the disguise following his failures at Globo Gym. He's no stranger to losing weight. I know he gained weight at the end of Dodgeball, but he can lose it. It's not unreasonable. My theory is rock solid, but do I believe it? I mean, Tommy Lee Jones literally plays the same character in The Fugitive and Double Jeopardy, and other movies too. Is it enough to just draw connections to a couple things, write a whole script, and just hope it's engaging enough for people to watch? To be honest, I don't think it matters. Alright, well I can't jump anymore, so that kind of sucks. I wasted my last one coming to Camp Hope. I don't even know what state I'm in. And that's my lore-heavy ending to this video to clean up the fact that I could teleport in the last video. Have a good day. I'm gonna find my way out of here.